Two strangers talk for 5 minutes, then rate each other in separate rooms. Almost every pair likes the other more than they guessed. Not slightly more, enough that researchers gave the mismatch a name, and enough that it followed college roommates for months. It's called the liking gap, the distance between how much people like you and how much you think they do. And it runs in one direction in nearly everyone. You're, statistically, underestimating the room. Here's the setup, because the setup is what makes this hard to argue with. Erica Boothby and her collaborators, working out of Yale and Cornell, brought in people who had never met. 2 chairs, a small room, a list of conversation starters, 5 minutes on the clock. Nothing dramatic. Where are you from? What are you studying? The kind of talk you'd forget by dinner. Then they split the pair up, and each person answered 2 questions privately, with no way to compare notes. How much did you like them? And then, how much do you think they liked you? Same conversation. 2 people, 4 numbers. If we read each other well, those numbers should roughly line up. They didn't. How much people liked their partner kept landing higher than their guess about being liked back. Both people walked out of the same 5 minutes convinced they were the one who came off worse. And here's the part that should have killed the whole effect, but didn't. The researchers tried longer conversations, more time to settle in, more time to read the other person. The gap didn't close. If anything, the extra minutes just handed you more material to cringe about later. Then they left the lab because a lab is a lab and a stranger is a stranger. They followed first-year students who'd been assigned roommates, not a study anymore, people who now shared a room. They checked in across the year, the first weeks, the middle, later once the novelty was long gone. If this were just first meeting nerves, it should have evaporated by around October. It didn't. Months in, sharing 100 square feet, they were still underestimating how much the other liked them. 2 people, 1 room, half a year of laundry and sleep schedules, and both still guessing low. That's not nerves about a first impression. That's a stable error in how you read your own life. So the obvious question, how do you get something this basic wrong for that long in the same direction? Here's the mechanism, and it's simpler and more uncomfortable than you'd like it to be. In any conversation, you're running 2 tracks at once. There's the one out loud, the words everyone hears. And there's the second track, the running commentary, the one nobody else in the room has access to. The one saying, "That was too loud. Why did I bring up my flight? That story had no ending. You laughed half a second late, and you heard it. They didn't. It never registered. You said the word anyway 3 times, and you counted. They were quietly thinking about lunch. You forgot their name while they were still in the middle of saying it, and you've been managing that ever since. Meanwhile, what are they actually getting? Your face, your voice, the polite outside, nothing underneath it. So you're grading 2 completely different recordings and then comparing the scores like they're the same show. They're watching what you did, you're watching everything you almost did and everything you'd take back. You get the outtakes. They only ever see the take that aired. And nobody warns you that you're the only person in the room holding the director's cut. Which means the harshest critic you'll ever meet is working with footage no one else will ever see. Now, you'd assume everyone's equally lost in there, that we're all guessing blind and it roughly evens out. And that's where the study turned genuinely strange because it ruled out the comfortable explanation. The researchers had outside observers watch recordings of these conversations. No nerves, no stake, no skin in it. The observers could tell. Watching from outside, they read how much each person liked the other reasonably well. The signal was there the entire time, on the tape, visible to anyone who wasn't starring in it. Everyone else could see it was going fine, except the 2 people it was actually happening to. That's the whole thing. The information isn't hidden, you're just standing far too close to read it. You're the only person at the party who can't see your own face. If that just reframes something for you, that's exactly what this channel is for. Stick around, because it gets sharper from here, and the next part is the one that quietly costs people friendships. Start with who has it worse because this thing isn't distributed evenly at all. The researchers looked at shyness, not a diagnosis, just the ordinary kind, where rooms feel a little harder. Shyer people didn't just have the gap, they had a noticeably bigger one. The more you worry about how you're coming across, the further off your estimate turns out to be. That's a cruel piece of engineering, so sit with it for a second before we move on. The person monitoring the conversation most carefully is the person getting the answer most wrong. All that attention isn't buying you accuracy, it's just turning up the volume on the wrong track. You're not reading the room, you're reading the transcript of your own head and calling it the room. And it gets worse in a specific way. Look at where the gap does the most damage. Not with your oldest friend who has watched you be weird for a decade and kept showing up. With them, you have evidence, years of it. The guessing stopped a long time ago. The gap lives in new relationships, the first coffee, the first week, the person you just met and liked, which is exactly where things get decided by whether somebody bothers to reach out a second time. Think about your first week at a job. You genuinely don't know yet who likes you. So you go quiet. You eat at your desk because walking over to that table feels presumptuous. You don't want to be the person who assumed, so you wait to be invited. And at that table, someone isn't inviting you because they've assumed you'd probably rather be left alone. Two people, one lunch, both waiting for a signal. The other one is too polite to send. That's the liking gap doing its real work, not hurt feelings, missed weeks, missed people. Now put those two findings together, and you get the sentence this entire video is built on. The people who most want to be liked are the least able to see that they already are. That's the shape of it. The wanting and the blindness aren't separate problems. They're the same reflex. The attention that would tell you you're fine is pointed inward at the only channel carrying bad news. And here's the quiet cost. The gap doesn't just make you feel worse, it makes you act smaller. You leave first, you skip the follow-up, you keep it short so you don't overstay a welcome you assume is thin. You've decided the verdict before the room voted, and then you behave like it came back guilty. Which is how a wrong guess quietly turns itself into a real outcome. So let's talk about the person who never texted back. You already know which one I mean. You had a genuinely good conversation. You got home, typed something, read it twice, and deleted it. Then you waited, nothing came, and you filed the whole evening away as, I misread that. Except now, run the same math on their side of the table. They also walked home underestimating how much you liked them. They also drafted something and stared at it. They also decided that reaching out first would make it look like they cared more than you did. Two people, same evening, identical conclusion, opposite chairs, and a friendship that just quietly doesn't happen. Nobody rejected anybody. You were both waiting on proof that neither of you was willing to send. So here's the practical part, and it's smaller than you'd expect. It's not a personality transplant. You don't have to become confident. Confidence is a mood. You can't order one up on a Tuesday. You only have to change your default guess. That's it. One assumption, flipped. When you don't know how it landed, assume it landed fine, because the evidence says that's the better bet. Not they loved me, just probably a little better than the number currently sitting in your head. Then act on the corrected number, send the text, take the seat, ask the second question. And when silence shows up, hand it the boring explanation before you hand it the brutal one. They're busy. Their phone's face down. They're waiting on you. All of those beat they didn't like me. One more habit, because this one closes the gap for somebody else instead of for you. When you like something about a person, say it out loud, in the moment, plainly, no build-up. They won't guess it on their own. That's the entire point of the last 9 minutes. You're the only one who can hand them the evidence you're already carrying around. So, two strangers, 5 minutes, and both walk out, sure they were the disappointing one. Roommates months later, still wrong in the same direction. Observers watching the tape, seeing it clearly. You're almost certainly better liked than you think, and the ones who worry hardest are furthest off. You can't hear yourself the way they hear you. That's not a flaw to fix. It's a correction to apply. If this reframed something for you, like and subscribe. Next up, why the people who know the most doubt themselves the hardest. Until then, assume you were liked. You'll be right more often than not. See you in the next one.